Hello, this is your host. Today's question is, what happened to Evelyn Hartley? This is a missing persons cold case file. If you have information about this case, please contact the provided email. First, I'm going to look at the background of this case. Then I'll look at the theories surrounding her disappearance. First, some background. On June 1st, 1970, 4-year-old Evelyn Hartley was supposed to meet her mother for lunch in Providence, Rhode Island. The day before, Evelyn's mother, Dorothy, had dropped her off at her friend's house so she could attend a Girl Scout meeting. The friend's name was Helen Walsh, and she lived at 267 Laurel Hill Avenue in Providence. Helen was also acting as Evelyn's babysitter. At 11:30 a.m., Dorothy picked up Evelyn's sister from Helen's house. She drove her to her father's house, which was just down the road from Helen's house. At 12:30 p.m., Dorothy went to Helen's house to pick up Evelyn for their lunch date. Helen told Dorothy that Evelyn had gone to the bathroom and she would be out shortly. After knocking, Dorothy let herself into the house through the back door because she had a key. She called out for Evelyn, but there was no answer. She checked the bathroom and the bedroom where Evelyn was supposed to be staying, but the bed was neatly made and the window was open, so it looked like Evelyn had climbed out of it. Dorothy thought it strange that Helen hadn't noticed that Evelyn had left the house, so they started looking around the neighborhood for her. After not finding her, they contacted the police and reported her missing. They put out a description of Evelyn and asked residents in the area to check their yards for her. 3 hours after she was reported missing, they found her bicycle in some bushes in Lincoln Woods, a wooded area near the 3 homes. This was about 2 miles away from where she was last seen. It seemed strange that Evelyn would leave home without telling anyone and ride her bike to a wooded area. Her family didn't believe that she was capable of doing this. At first, the police focused their investigation on Helen. They searched her home and the surrounding areas, but they never found anything. They did find some inconsistencies in her story. She said that she had given Evelyn a glass of milk at 11:30 a.m., but when they checked the house, they found that the milk carton was full. They also found a note on the kitchen counter which Helen claimed that she wrote to remind herself to pick up some chicken on her way home. However, they found out that Helen had written the note before Evelyn arrived. The police grew suspicious of Helen, but they couldn't charge her with anything. After all, Evelyn had been left in her care and she did know the child, so Helen was only considered a possible suspect and not a criminal. A few weeks later, the police searched Helen's house again with a warrant. They brought in cadaver dogs, but they didn't find anything. In 1971, Helen moved away and the investigation went cold. Occasionally, the police would get tips about Evelyn's disappearance, but none of them led to anything. And over the years, the media largely ignored the case. Now, moving on to the theories. Theory number 1 is that Helen Walsh kidnapped and murdered Evelyn. Considering that she was the last person to see her alive, it makes sense that the police focused their investigation on her. As I said earlier, there were some inconsistencies with her story, but ultimately nothing concrete. Maybe Evelyn got out of her room and wandered off. Helen may not have realized that she had left until Dorothy came to pick her up. When she realized that Evelyn was missing, she panicked and hid the body. The reason why they didn't find any evidence of a struggle in the house is because Helen carried Evelyn out of the house. The biggest piece of evidence against Helen is that she knew Evelyn's routine and her house was close to where the bike was found. This may mean that she brought Evelyn to the bike and left her there, or possibly she took her there later on. If she did, she must have dumped her body somewhere else because it has never been found. Even if Helen did kill Evelyn, the state probably wouldn't charge her today. All of the evidence is circumstantial, and it's not clear that they could prove that Helen was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Theory number 2 is that an unknown person kidnapped and murdered Evelyn. Someone may have snatched Evelyn while she was playing outside or riding her bike. When the police found her bike in the woods, they assumed that she had been playing there and left without her bike. But maybe this was the crime scene. Maybe Evelyn was riding her bike home when someone grabbed her off the street. That person then took her to the wooded area and abandoned the bike, or maybe they even brought her here first and then took her somewhere else. This theory is a bit confusing. Why would an unknown abductor bring Evelyn to a wooded area and then leave her bike there? It doesn't seem likely that they would do this unless they intended to dump her body in the woods. Police never found any evidence that someone else was involved. There were no witnesses and no suspects. This is why I think Helen is still the prime suspect. In 1989, the case was featured on America's Most Wanted, but this didn't generate any new leads. By the early 2000s, the case went completely cold. In 2014, Evelyn's family created a website to keep her memory alive and to raise awareness about the case. Recently, a filmmaker named Robert Young created a documentary about the case. He interviewed people who knew Evelyn, and he examined all of the evidence. He believes that Helen Walsh is guilty and that she killed Evelyn on June 1st, 1970. His reasoning is that the murder weapon was most likely a garrote, like a scarf or a cord. Helen would have used it to strangle Evelyn, then stuffed her body in a duffel bag. She put the bag in the trunk of her car and drove to Lincoln Woods. Then she took the body out of the car and hid it in the woods. This is just his theory, but it seems logical. The body was never recovered, so we can't determine the cause of death. There are a lot of cases where the body is never recovered, but the police can pinpoint a cause of death based on the evidence. For example, in 2002, the skeletal remains of a woman were found in Ohio. The police didn't know who she was or how she died, but they found a plastic bag nearby that contained some women's clothing and a bullet. They also found a shoe that matched a pair of footprints near where the body was found. These footprints were small, so the police believed that the victim was a child. The bullet and the footprints led them to believe that the cause of death was a gunshot wound, even though they never found a weapon or any tissue. In Evelyn's case, we don't have much evidence to go off of, and Helen's motive is unclear. She was a babysitter and a friend of the family. Maybe she snapped and killed Evelyn for no apparent reason. Maybe she had some sort of sick obsession with the girl. Or maybe she was trying to protect Evelyn from a sick and twisted world. I think we can all agree that this case is far from over. Just because the police haven't made any progress doesn't mean that Evelyn's family should give up hope. With the help of social media and technology, old cases are being solved all the time. Take the case of Alyssa Turney, for example. She disappeared in 2001. Her stepmother initially gave conflicting accounts of what happened to her. Later on, she admitted to smothering the girl to death. She hid her body in the desert and even led the police to the site. She was convicted of murder and is serving a life sentence. Even if Helen Walsh is still alive, she's probably an old woman by now, and it's never too late to confess. I hope that someday Evelyn's family gets the answers that they deserve. Those are my thoughts on the Evelyn Hartley case. Please share your thoughts in the comments. As always, I appreciate your support.